Good evening. No. That's not Good evening.
Good evening.
Don't let the blazer fool you. I'm here to have fun. My name is Patrick Williams. I am, Shyam's right, I am a Masters of Divinity student at Princeton. I am also a Masters of Social Work student at Rutgers. Go Scarlet Knights. But I want to talk to you about words, and please excuse my voice. I'm a little under the weather, so bear with me. I've always had an affinity for words, and I've always believed in the power of words. Words really have the ability to create or destroy. They have the ability to heal and to harm. And it is my faith background that causes me to believe that God actually spoke this world into existence through words. And that's a powerful thing when you talk about creating worlds with words. As a young child, I was always fascinated with words. My mother said that when I was 4, I used to write stories, full stories, and I would want to present them and narrate them to my mother. I don't think most of the words were spelled correctly in those stories, but she said I had a great enthusiasm. And I remember when I was 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, loving to read. I was a voracious reader. Anybody know Goosebumps in here? Yeah. Anybody read Fear Street? That was when like you grew out of Goosebumps, but you still wanted to read Goosebumps, but you don't want to be like a kid anymore, quote unquote. So I read Fear Street. I read a lot of different books on different topics, different areas. But words were always a part of my life. Shyam gave me this outline, and I'm trying to go as best as I can to it. So when I was about 14, I want to say, there was this show on HBO called Deaf Poetry. And this is around the time I was in 9th grade. And I remember I was up late watching this show. And Emcee Baraka, who's a poet, civil rights activist, a professor, among a lot of other things, scholar, he was reciting this poem on reparations. And it really intrigued me. The ability he had to render words to his command, the ability they had to bend words, and to place words next to each other to emote an effect on the people. And I looked at myself and I was like, I could do that. And I remember I picked up my first notebook and I picked up my first pen and I wrote my first poem. And I read it to my mother and she thought it was awesome. And she wanted me to recite it, and I lost it. I lost my first poem. But I remember I wrote another poem. I guess I would title that my second poem, right? And the poem was called Around My Way. And I remember going to an open mic in my town. I'm from Georgia. I'm also from Albany, New York. In my high school career, I was in Albany, New York. And there was this open mic called Soul Kitchen. It was a monthly. People would meet, people would share. I got up to the mic and I remember reciting this poem, and I mean, I utterly bombed. Like, I totally blanked halfway through the piece. And so, but the encouragement that people showed me and the feeling that I had when I finally finished this poem was inspiring, and I was hooked ever since then. Words have the power to heal. When I was 14, that's when my mother was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis and sarcoidosis, which are 2 autoimmune diseases that affect your autoimmune system. They have many different symptoms, but one of the symptoms for my mother is that she ended up in a wheelchair through malpractice, through mistreatment, misdiagnosis, and I'm an only child. So it's just me and my mother. All my family is back in Georgia. Through that time, it was very rough because she was in and out of hospitals. She was actually in and out of nursing homes. I was a very independent child. And I had been through, by the end of my high school career, I was in four different high schools in 5 years. And I had dropped out, I got my GED, and I was working dead-end jobs. I never lost my pen and my paper. Even some of the darkest times, I think words carried me through those times. It was the words that had the power to create that got me into my undergrad. It was always a dream of mine that I would go to school, but I never thought that I could make it to college. At that point, there are many people that pour into your life, and there are people that can pour good things or bad things into your life. So I had people pouring into my life that I was a failure. And so I did not believe that I still had the ability to attend college. But it was the words of some family friends, and they spoke to a counselor at his alma mater who called me, and with the support of my mother, my family friends, I was accepted into college. Fast forward to 5 years later, not really because I couldn't do it in 4 years, just because I wanted to stick around and do what I wanted to do. That's where the three minors come from. I'm a graduate. I still didn't know what I wanted to do with my life though. And it was words of friends that told me, do what you love. Work your passion, because if you don't work your passion, you'll give it all back. And I decided, what do I love? And I was like, I love God and I love people. And so I wanted to do something that was related to both those things. I like to tell people that God tricked me into going into seminary, because I had no idea what seminary was. I was like, I want to do something to help people, especially communities of color that I live in. I want to do something social justice oriented. I want to do something that works with my faith, my God. And I remember calling admissions, and a friend of mine just happened to answer the phone. We weren't friends at the time, but we became friends when I entered into Princeton. And he was like, oh man, you can do all that here. You can, you can take classes with Cornell West and Eddie Glaude and Monty Perry, and that's all I needed to hear. Like Cornell West, I was going. I was like, oh, word, I'll do that, right? So started filling out my application. I was working 2 jobs at the time. My grandfather would say I was working can't see in the morning until can't see at night, 6:30 a.m. to like 12 midnight. I let the application go. The deadline passed. And Princeton sent me some words in an email and said, even though the deadline has passed, we can still consider you if you finish your application. And I heard the words of God tell me, if you finish this application, you'll be accepted into Princeton. And so every waking moment that I had free, I was finishing that application. Fast forward, I was accepted, obviously, right? But I never. And now my passion is not only to help myself, but through words to help those in need. Young men like myself who grew up in harsh conditions, communities who are in hurt and who are in pain, using social work, using ministry, and using poetry and spoken word and the arts to add catharsis and heal wounds. So. One thing, when I was thinking about what poem I would do, my mother always used to tell me, and I hated it growing up, but it was one of the truest things that she ever said. She said, Patrick, always work out of your highest self. So it is not okay for you to do the bare minimum. A 70 is not okay. An 80 is not okay. If you can do more, a 70 is all right if you can do 70. An 80 is okay if you can do 80. But if you can do 100, 120, 150%, then we are obligated, required to do more and work out the maximum of our lives. So this poem is entitled, Don't Settle.